Perfect. So first, we're going to start with the land acknowledgement. Sorry. We would like to acknowledge that our land in which we gather has been and still is the traditional territory of several indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wanda, the Métis, and the Mississauga of the First Credit Nations. Since time immemorial, numerous indigenous nations and indigenous people have lived and passed through this territory. We recognize that this territory is covered by the Dish of One Spoon Treaty and the Two Rum Policy, which emphasizes the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respectful relationship. Sheridan affirms that it is our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, those who are yet to come. We are grateful for this opportunity to be working and living on this land. Quick Zoom orientation. Mute if you're not speaking so we can eliminate any background noise. Welcome is not mandatory but fully encouraged so we can see everyone's lovely faces. If you have any questions, type it in the chat box. Me or Kristel will be looking at the chat box so I can answer the questions, and the session will be recorded. So on today's agenda, we're just going to just do the welcomes and introductions, presentations, and then the Q&A. So at Sheridan, we are the entrepreneurship and growth system at Sheridan, and what we do is we strengthen the regional innovation ecosystem through collaborations and impact entrepreneurs' expertise. We also provide support for entrepreneurs by offering mentorships, learning programs, and co-working spaces. We also connect entrepreneurs to Sheridan's talents, expertise, and resources. So for those who don't know, we have Explore, Leap, Rise, and Soar programs. These 4 programs are from the ideation process to growing your ventures to scaling your growth. Today, we have our newest mentor, Kristel. She is a change management specialist with 13 years of experience helping entrepreneurs move past the challenges of financing and funding to produce successful ventures. She also helped founders overcome holding them back and making them move confidently towards their goals. So thank you for joining. Kristel, I'm going to hand it off to you. We can do introductions as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Gianna. Thanks. Nice to have you here. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I know it's busy days, long days, and I know we've got a million things on our plates, I'm sure, but I really appreciate when people take a few minutes to come and join us. I just want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship today, and I noticed some of the chat there, so we'll definitely get chatting about that. I want to start a little bit about, just to let you know, for those, because a lot of you I haven't met, so I noticed and I didn't recognize some of the names. So I've been an entrepreneur several times over. I'm on my 5th venture now. I'm I love entrepreneurship. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. It's in the blood, and it's something that I've always loved and believed in. And certainly when I'm not in my own business, I'm helping other people with their businesses. So this is what my fun and excitement is. So yeah, and I appreciate too. I was just wondering if we could actually just take a minute and just have a little look and see if everybody's here, because I'd love to see who's in the room and introduce yourself. I can appreciate some of you are maybe want to share, maybe don't want to share, but to me, it's just nice to be able to sort of, when you're talking about a mentoring and sort of a clubhouse, it is to me, I learn just as much from myself. I learn from you. We learn from each other, and it's always nice just to kind of get an idea of who's in the room and why you're here. And like I said, I know that some of you filled in the chat, and I appreciate that. But I'm just going to go to the view here and see if I can see everybody here. And there we go. That's better. Hi. There's Sarah. Hi, Zara. I didn't see you there. How are you? Good to see you. And yeah, so does anybody want to share? I mean, I appreciate, I won't put anybody on the spot if you don't want to, but does anybody want to share who they are and why they're here? And like I said, I know some chat stuff are here, but it's nice to know who's in the room. Anybody interested? Maybe not.
I can
Yeah, go for it.
Love it. Thank you. I knew I could count on you. Nice to see you. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I joined in a little bit late. I was just, family and food.
Yes, all those responsibility things. I understand those things.
I'm just catching up from when I came in. So I like attending the Mentor Monday sessions just because I've picked up, advice and insights from the group interaction and the advice that's
Yeah.
provided. So I keep an eye out and I love popping in. But I've spoken to you one-on-one as well.
Yes, we've had the pleasure of chatting, which I appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah. So the two projects that I'm working on right now are one, a clean tech startup called Ecosystem Informatics Inc. We're making environmental monitoring devices and a full system just to make that more easier for governments and industries alike. And I'm also working on a nonprofit community to support the growth of social enterprise.
You're busy. You're very busy. Lots going on. And that's what, and thanks for talking about, because it just, as I said, if and we'll keep going, we'll talk a little bit, but it's just nice because I think you found too the value, as you said, of sharing with other people. Sometimes there's connections that could be made. Sometimes it's networking opportunities. Sometimes it's a connection where somebody might know a better resource that you can be using and stuff like that. And I can tell you, entrepreneurship sometimes tends to be a little bit lonely. And especially now these days, especially if you don't have a bricks and mortar location or you don't have an office location. And again, let's not add COVID to this. But and you end up being in your homes and by yourself and working away and try to chip away with this. And this is why I love the fact that everybody's here today, just a chance to show and share and talk about, potentially, some ideas about where you can go with entrepreneurship. So we're going to keep going. And then, like I said, there's a point where we can chat a little bit more if everybody wants to, but I appreciate everybody being here today. So yeah, that's me. Maybe Tiana, we can flip over to our presentation, if you wouldn't mind. I'm going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. I've been paying attention to the chat there, and I'm happy. Some of it's more general. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that. And then we can sort of, if there's other things you would like to ask me about other than that, we can certainly do that at the end. So I always say that entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And as I said, I'm on my 5th business. I've had the pleasure of working with different businesses, some successful, some not so successful. And why I say that is because there tends to be sort of this idea that entrepreneurship is easy. Maybe I'll just get you to flip to the other slide, Tiana, because it kind of speaks to what I'm talking about. Because a lot of times I see people and they're like, oh, this is entrepreneurship. Yeah, we've got our yachts, we've got our boats, we've got, our private airplanes. And it's amazing how a lot of people tend to glorify entrepreneurship and that it's the, the riches and all these things. And that's great. I mean, if that's the level you attain. But I have the problem I always have to say, and I have to sort of burst people's bubbles, is because the amount of wealth that you see on the screen is less than 1% of actual entrepreneurs will achieve. And so when we start to talk about entrepreneurship, it really is it has to come from a place of passion and something that you love to do. It's one of those things that you will work 24/7 in your business as you're building your business, and especially in the first couple of years of business. You work, it's not 9 to 5. It is not, 10 to 4, 9 to 5. You're not Monday to Friday and take weekends off because, as the first 2 years of business, usually 2 to 3 years, somebody asked the question about how long, depends on the business, but I would say a good 2 to 3 years is when you start to solidify things. And that is critical mass points. And so when you're not working in your business and developing these tools or developing your skill sets or developing what needs to happen, you're working on your business. And so I've had the pleasure with my time working with some of our edge clients here, as we've been talking a lot about. And so the first year, usually when you start to explore entrepreneurship, you're looking at what we call our minimal viable product. You start having to build things, and it takes time. It takes practice. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But it takes perseverance. And it's one of those things when you talk about an entrepreneurial mindset, what does it take in order to be successful? there's a lot of these principles that we have to engage. And it doesn't mean you have to check all the boxes and say, well, I've got all of those, I'm sure I'll be successful. It doesn't always work that way. But we can certainly going to talk about a little bit about what you do need to have in order to pursue this. So as much as I love this, the success and wealth for this, it really isn't the real picture. And so that's what we wanted to talk to you about today. I'll get you to flip the slide, please, Tiana. I love this quote. I love this quote. It's, you need the hunger no matter what. Basically, they talk about the honeymoon period wears off. Somewhere between printing your business cards that say founder on them and everything else you have to do, you realize, oh, this is actually a ton of work. And it's fascinating to me because this is the true thing. When I first talk to people in business and they're first starting, they're excited, maybe you've just registered your business, done a little bit of work, and everybody's in what we call the honeymoon phase. And it's all things are roses and petals and everything's going to be great. And I get that. I love that. I love that passion, enthusiasm. But very shortly after, it has to become, you sort of have to step away from that and start to step back from, there's actual real attainable steps that need to happen in order for you to be successful. And so I work a lot. I work with Edge. I also work with a lot of other entrepreneurs to try and get them to what I'm sort of a bit of a reality check kind of person. That's where I've been maybe, people say I kind of put them through the goalpost of life, the reality check of life. But, it's really important to spend that first year, yes, celebrate little successes along the way, but really get streamlined on how you're going to build this business model so that you can enjoy the successes of that will come, and once you put your head down. So when we talk about characteristics of an entrepreneur, I'm going to get Tiana to flip the slide. There's a couple of things that are come across. And I've been working with entrepreneurs, just in general, teaching and working with entrepreneurs for over 16 years now. And so I've seen all kinds of people come from all kinds of backgrounds and experiences and life experience and work experience who have been successful at entrepreneurship. Some didn't come inherently with those qualities. Some of them had to develop them. Some of them had to build them, but they often found certain characteristics. And what I will say in general, what I tend to see is a couple things. So first of all, it's the whole do what you love and love what you do. I think it's really important when you are an entrepreneur. Most of you are here considering entrepreneurship if you're not already an entrepreneur, because there's something that you really inherently love about the work you do. You believe in it. You have a passion for it. It's your baby. You really see the potential of this idea. And that's where good entrepreneurs start from. They have to be passionate about what they do, because when those times get difficult, when it gets hard work, when it's just things aren't working out the way you hoped it would, and maybe you have some letdowns, maybe you're, some of your market research isn't turning out the way you think it should, or maybe your some actual implementation of some of your processes aren't working. There's going to be times when you are going to be challenged with difficulty. And I really stand firm in it. It's the passion and your love for what you want to do that helps you fuel that fire when things aren't going as well. So a lot of entrepreneurs I've always seen, they always have a passion. When they talk about their business, they talk about their product or the service that they offer, they light up. Their faces light up, their passion is there. You can see it in their heart. They have no problem telling you what they do. And it's inherently one of those characteristics that I think is really important. Confidence is an interesting one. Confidence is something that doesn't always come right away. But I will say to you that the successful entrepreneurs that I have met come from a place of a quiet understanding. They might not necessarily be boastful or bragful in that confidence manner, but they are sure about what they know. And they are sure about where they stand with that product or service. And they are sure and certain that they know where they're going or the possibility of that. And so, again, it's that confidence and belief that not only in their product or service, but in themselves, that they have what it takes to continue on when things go wrong. And like I said, it doesn't always go well. You can see the bended pencil there, the whippler. What I always say, one of the greatest skill sets I see in entrepreneurs is flexibility. Because you're going to find that as you go through the planning process, a lot of times when you're first starting out, it's very theoretical. It's very sort of by the books. You think you've got a plan. Maybe you've already written a plan. Maybe you've worked through a business model canvas. You've got it all laid out on paper. And logistically, it sounds like it makes sense. You're thinking, yeah, I think this makes perfect sense, the order of how it's going to do. And I'm here to tell you, it's not going to go that way. Things are going to mess up. Things are not what you put all your thought in and your ideas about something. Sometimes it gets challenged. Sometimes things don't go the way. Maybe you're hoping to do business with a particular supplier and they've gone out of business. Things happen. But what I would say to you as an entrepreneur, you have to be very flexible and agile. You have to be able to have that skill set that where if plan A doesn't work out, that with a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of stepping back and looking at, then you've got a plan B and maybe a plan C. I can tell you, having several businesses, one was a home hardware, for example. I had staff of, I had 12 people on staff. I had a fair size store. I had a lot of inventory coming through my doors. And sometimes I didn't have money to pay for my inventory. Maybe I was short on things. Things happen. Maybe I was short on stock. I had floods in my store, you name it. But the ability to be flexible and agile and be able to move with the punches and go with the punches, if you will, was a great skill set that I had. And I was able to bring that to my partner. He had other attributes that worked well in our partnership. And I was always the one who had plan E, F, and G if that didn't work. And that's one of those things that you have to be. So being mindful about being flexible, and don't be so rigid to think that everything's going to go the way perfectly, because I can tell you it won't. Things like bringing the management skills. So you have to have some kind of understanding of what it takes to manage, and especially even if you are a team of one. If you are starting your business and you're one person, I always say team of one, team of many. Ideally, most of you would, and people that I've had the pleasure of meeting over the last couple of years have said, eventually I'm starting myself, but my eventual plan is I'd like to hire somebody. Maybe I'd like to subcontract some work out, things like that. But in order to be able to do this, you have to come from some understanding of business, some basic skill sets. Just understanding a little bit about leadership skills, learning a little bit about management. And this could come from an employment opportunity. Maybe you've been working, on the side, you've worked to this point where you're looking to, maybe a part-time job or a full-time job, and looking to those leaders. And I always say to people, look to the people that you admire. Look at people that you've worked for, maybe colleagues, maybe other mentors that you've met in different programs, teachers, professors. Look at those qualities. And a lot of times they had great management skills. They were able to work with people. They were able to instill that confidence. They were able to show and demonstrate they had great communication skills. And that's where we sort of have to learn, but you have to have the basis of that. And if it's not your forte, if you're not really a great communicator, it doesn't mean you can't have your own business, but you certainly, that's one of the skill sets you're going to have to work on. Right? But you might have great other abilities that will sort of help, complement that, but it's going to be something, and get real about those skills for yourself, because that's where, as a leader, and I'm constantly pushing entrepreneurs that I know to continue on their professional development, right? Just because they're entrepreneurs doesn't mean they know everything about everything. So where, do an inventory of your own skill sets and say, what am I lacking? What am I missing? And what's going to be important when I decide I want to run my business? And that might be some work in doing some more professional development, whether it be coaching or taking some courses, whatever that looks like. But be real about what it's going to take, because you're going to need to rely on your own skill sets. When I've owned my business, I've always been a team of one for most cases. Two of them I wasn't, but the other ones I was. And so I was everything. I was the marketer. I was the salesperson. I was the janitor that fixed, the washroom area if it broke down. I was all of those people. And so I didn't know everything about all of those topics, but I did know a little bit about everything. And that made the difference for me. You love my tight rope walker there. That's a risk taker. In business, you have to take a little bit of risk. There are things you're going to have to sort of roll the dice on. Certainly, you do your homework, you do your sort of what we call an educated guess from your research and your instinctual information and your gut reaction. And it's kind of, I would say it's a bit of a magic formula. I can't tell you exactly how much of each you need, but at some point you will have to make educated guesses. And that's where the risk taking comes in. You have to know how far you can take that risk and be able to take that risk. You got to jump off that bridge. You know, sometimes that, it's always interesting. I meet a lot of people who are so prepared and have done their homework, and they're standing at the edge of that bridge. They're standing at the edge and they just like, I don't know. And it's like, if you want to go and you want this to happen, you got to step off and trust that all that your homework, your research, and your information will pay off. And if it doesn't, then you start again, or you go backwards and you sort of figure it out. But you have to have an element of risk, and that goes along inherently with trust. You'll notice I'm sort of flipping around here, grit. I love the name grit. Grit is, and I can't see the definition there, but oh yeah, sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, right? And it's that perseverance. Again, those days when some days it's gonna suck. I can tell you, you know, people in the room here, Lisa, I'm sure anybody who's owned a business,
yeah.
some days it sucks, doesn't it, Lisa? You're just like, why did I bother?
Some
right?
days it does, but then there's those days which are exhilarating.
Right. And they make up for those days that suck, right? Because you always know there's going to be those days. And I've done it too. I think, oh, why did I get out of bed? Oh my goodness, put the cover over my head and go back to sleep. But the fact that I have some ideas about how I want to live my life and all my goals and ambitions and things I want to do in my life, that's that grit that makes me get out of bed, makes me get going again. And like I said, you got to be determined, even when you're getting, you know, knocked on your butt side or things are happening that you don't like to, you got to continue to move forward. And those who have true grit will be successful. I can assure you of that. Networking, you notice there's a group of people there talking there, and networking is a hard thing. Some of us are a little bit more, maybe a little bit more shy, maybe a little bit more introverted, not so comfortable. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean you don't have the attributes of being an entrepreneur. But what I will say to you is that because for most of you considering entrepreneurship, most of you it will be your baby. You will be a team of one, usually to start with, or maybe one or two, but a very small, nimble team. And in order for you to make sure that people know about your product and service, you're going to have to step out a little bit of that square. You're going to have to be a little bit bolder and learn about how to sort of step out of that comfort zone a little bit so that you can better interact and start to sell your product or service, because you are it. You are the business is you. A lot of business owners I meet are usually, a lot of them I've met recently are service-based businesses. And I always say to them, as a service-based business, you're your product, you know, you're it. And some of you, even if you have a product, you still have to let people know all about it. How are we going to find out about this wonderful product that we need to buy? So inherently, there's going to be some times where you're going to have to understand what it's like to step out and socialize and tell people a little bit about it. And there's lots of great courses. I'm always happy to help anybody who's interested in networking. I understand how to network. I took courses and learned how to network properly. So I learned how to skill myself and bring that skill into my life, how to interact with people, how to shake people's hand, how to eye contact, what are sort of the etiquettes, social etiquettes, those things like that. Maybe that's maybe a future Mentor Monday or something, Lisa and Tiana. Maybe that's something we could do, because there are etiquettes. There are little things that you can sort of show some tips and tricks about how to sort of keep people engaged. And even now, especially in our world of Zoom, there's still lots of networking events going on. There's still lots of opportunities to connect with people, even in our world of COVID. And so, you know, learning how to interact with people, even virtually, is a skill set in itself. It's not easy, right? It's not easy. So, but these are important skill sets to have, because again, you're going to need them in order to promote your product or service. You notice our famous little dollar sign there. I love that. There's a big breath there, because every day I meet lots of people, and I have the pleasure of meeting entrepreneurs every day, and they'll say to me, Kristel, is there any grant money? Is there money out there? Is there free money? The government, people tell me there's government money all the time. I'm here to break everybody's heart, because there is not. There may be some programs along the way that might have little incentives. There certainly, when there's tax credits and things like that. Yes, with COVID, there's a lot of incentives right now. But even with those incentives comes a price tag, right? Nothing is free. There's no such thing as free money. And so what I always say to people, one of the characteristics that I need a good entrepreneur I see it has the ability to step back from that and start to think about what we call bootstrapping, or I like to say peel back the onion and sort of look at it from a process of how can I build my business model and my capacity and move up, right? So I'll give you an example. If I had wonderful ambitious, and I'm going to warn you right now, I always talk about food. I don't know. I always use foods businesses as my example because I love foods. I'm a foodie. I'm going to admit that right now. So if I had ambitions of opening a bakery, let's just say, and I wanted to have a special kind of bakery, but when I looked at my finances, I didn't have the credit rating. Perhaps I didn't have some financial monies to invest in it. Wasn't enough. The bank's not going to give me some money for capital, working capital, or capital expenses because I just don't have, I'm not in a great place financially. That doesn't mean that's going to kill my dream of owning a business. It might delay things a little bit, but might change my trajectory. But what I would look in that as a sort of a bootstrapping opportunity is what could I do? So if I loved making cakes, maybe that's one of my favorite things that I wanted to have in my bakery is special cakes. Is there an opportunity to peel back that onion, to bootstrap it a little bit and say, okay, I have an opportunity. There's commercial kitchens that are available that I could potentially rent. Now with COVID, a lot of restaurants are not open, or if they're only open at evening times or certain times of the day. So sometimes there's an opportunity to rent space, and I could actually rent a commercial kitchen, a restaurant space during the day, create my cakes, find out an audience that I need to maybe, because a lot of restaurants, you'll be surprised to know, especially fancy restaurants, they don't bake their own stuff. They buy fancy cakes. They buy cakes that they buy their desserts and bring them in. So is there an opportunity for me to build that channel, test my market, try different cakes, build a following, if you will? Then I start to build capacity, because then I start to build up the money's coming in. I start to build up a following of people who love my cakes and are following me everywhere. And maybe I offer it at a farmer's market or things like that. There's so many ways to be creative to create the opportunity that as I build my capacity and as I build my exposure, that it leads itself to me having enough money to go back to the bank to say, okay, here's where I am now. This is what I've done. And that's the characteristic of an entrepreneur. Nothing is handed to you. I can assure you of that. You're going to have to work at it. But as I mentioned about the agility and the flexibility also applies to money too. Finding ways to support your dream, finding ways to make movement instead of looking for grants and things like that, because they might be there, but they're short-lived, they're complementary, but they're not the basis of your business. So being really thoughtful about that. Yeah, lots to think about, right? But it's possible. And you don't have to check all these boxes, as I said, folks, but start to think about, where do I have some of that? Yeah, I have that. And where am I lacking? And that's where we need some practice and some training. Yeah.
Sometimes I hear these things though, Kristel, and I think that we scare people off from entrepreneurship, which
Don't
is
we?
maybe not a bad thing, but to me, the characteristics of an entrepreneur in addition to this is that ability to sort of say, instead of I can't, it's how.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's that, which is what you're saying, really. Yeah.
What's possible, right? If it's not this, then what's this? If this is not
right,
possible,
like you're saying, okay, commercial kitchens are more available right now.
Yeah.
Could I bake from home and develop a following? Could I post on Instagram to get my followers up?
Absolutely.
So I've got an audience to buy. Like, what could I do now?
That's right.
Yeah, and there's delivery only restaurants. Yeah, that's people taking advantage of
Absolutely.
Emerson. I love that. I don't know if you see that in the chat, Kristel.
I did. Yeah, it pops up quickly, but thank you for that, Emerson. You're exactly right. And so what's the opportunity with that? And that's part of that characteristic, is being sort of open to, if not this, then what? Right. And like I said, doesn't mean no, doesn't mean never. It just means that, being thought, and especially in the comedy that we are in, especially in the world that we are in right now, we're having to be more agile and nimble. And I think, and I appreciate what you're saying, Lisa, because I certainly don't want to scare people away. But on the same token, I don't want people to walk into this and not understand that there's a credible amount of, there's challenges that come with all of this. And I've seen lots of people who, started businesses without getting proper advice or getting resources that, like, for example, Edge provides, and then go off and do all these things and then be unsuccessful. and, you know, that time and energy and money that they've spent, you know. And so I'd rather, you know, sort of get people to think about, okay, yeah, this is what I could be doing, and this is how I can maneuver, and this is how I can be a little bit nimble, and then build capacity from there. Yeah, really important. And I appreciate you adding that in, because you're right. Sometimes I feel like I'm the negative nanny girl here, but you know, it's a real world. And I,
Oh, me too. Yeah, I feel
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, you want to give people the best success that they can, and the best shot at success for sure.
Yeah.
And I should clarify, and that's you sort of reminded me, Lisa, because success, folks, too, doesn't mean millions of dollars. I want to clarify what success means. Success is defined by what you define success as. So I'm not here to tell you that you have to be the unicorn and have a bazillion-dollar company and that's successful. Absolutely not. If you build a business that you are able to sustain, there's a viability piece to it that's going to ensure your livelihood. Maybe you have dreams of hiring, so there's a livelihood for other people that are involved in the restaurant. You know, whatever that looks, or I say restaurant, see, I've got food on the brain, but whatever that business looks like to you, and it does everything that you need it to do, and then some, then that's a successful business. So I wanted to say that, and I should have said that at the beginning, because, you know, along with that, you know, picture of all those, you know, a lot of people think that that's entrepreneurship, and true success is that I have to have my yacht and my boat. Absolutely not. It's absolutely not. And it's like I said, it's less than 1% that will actually get to that. Less than 1%. It's less than 0.5%, quite frankly. Yeah. So interesting, right? I'll get you to flip one more slide if you wouldn't mind, Tiana. So this is the official definition, right? And it speaks to what we've been talking about. It is actually the set of skills that enable people to identify with the opportunities and also learn from the setbacks, learn, you know, succeed, right? So that's your official definition. But all those skill sets that we talked about are exactly that. And again, you don't have to check all the boxes, but certainly it comes to mind that if I possess certain things that do check those boxes, there's opportunity for me to learn what I don't. And so I'm going to get Tiana to flip one more time, and here's how we learn. And in order to develop this, there's a couple little tips here. First of all, there's setting goals. Goals is a really important thing, because as a with the entrepreneurial mindset, it's important to actually have goals that you need to achieve. If you don't know where you're going, then you don't know what you're going to obtain, which means you don't know if you're succeeding or not. So, you know, and goal setting is a really important thing. So there's a lot of things about goals here too. I mean, it could be financial goals, it could be hiring goals, it could be sales goals, it could be customer goals, and all of the above, right? We certainly want all of these things to be, and we talk a lot about, Lisa and I've had great conversations about metrics and things that we need to achieve and things we need to strive for. But one part of it, when an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, starts to plan the process and starts to lay out that roadmap, and each time you hit one of those milestones or one of those goals that you set out in your process, then that helps build that confidence. That helps build that grit, that every time you faced a challenge that you had set out, and maybe you had a goal and maybe it got delayed for some reason, but it still happened. That's what builds that tenacity. That's what builds that, all those things that we just talked about in the previous slide. When you achieve those goals, those instrumentally pump you up and continue to move you forward. Right? So it's one of those things, and they help to sort of build that mindset that things are achievable, they are attainable. And every time you make that goal, then you think, okay, what's next? And you start to level up with your business, right? Practice, practice, practice. You know, everybody hears this all the time. And there's, you know, so when you start thinking about what you maybe don't do well, or some skill sets that you don't bring to the business, that's an opportunity to do things. Either to take some professional development courses and learn stuff that's in your realm that you could possibly learn, but also, you know, it's a chance for you to outsource as well. If you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, the skill set, there might be opportunity for you to bring like-minded people on board. Regardless of it is, you have to practice. Everything you do in your business, you have to practice and get better at. It's amazing, because I talk about, you know, some of the people I've been working with have been just doing things like writing emails and cold calls and selling. And, you know, that selling usually is the hardest part about business. People really struggle with having to pick up a phone and speak to somebody they've never spoken to, or send an email to somebody that they've never chatted with before. And I get it. I understand that, because it's kind of like that cold, I don't know you. They don't want to hear from me. Why would they want to hear a word I have to say? And yet it's the psychology of changing that message around, letting people to start to think about, changing the conversation, changing the methodology of how they approach those difficult tasks. And then what you do is, once you start to lay it out and change the way you think about it, and lay out a plan on how you can achieve those same goals, and then you practice. There's nothing wrong with practicing a way you would have a sales call with. And again, I'm very generic, folks, because everybody's in different businesses here, and half of them I don't know what businesses who's in what. But there's a mindset and a skill set, just practicing a way of calling up a company and introducing your product or service. And then pay attention to how the call went. And then write down after the call what things went really well. Where did you make connections with that person? Where did you feel you fell short? Then guess what? You pick up the phone again and you try another call, and you incorporate those pieces that you knew what flowed well the first time, and improvise on the parts that you knew you kind of fell down on, right? At the end of the day, yeah,
this is terrifying though.
I know. And it's terrifying. It stays for me, it's terrifying, right? It's something new and different. But what I think, I always come at a framework, Lisa, where, and thanks for saying that, because I always talk to my clients about coming at a place of education. And it sometimes helps to step back from the whole idea of I'm trying to sell somebody. If I can think about, if I have an amazing product or an amazing service that I know could be of great benefit to the company that I would like to talk to about it, maybe I'd like to sell my product or service to them, but I inherently know that I believe in my product and I know that my service is going to be that's really going to make a difference for them. Not doing them the favor of letting this product or service exists is a disservice. And so I always encourage my clients to come at it from a practice education, right? And sharing your knowledge and sharing that expertise and sharing that wonderful product or service on just, hey, so Lisa, if you have a company and I know my product's going to be great for your company, if I don't share it with you, then I'm doing a disservice to both of us, aren't I? Because my product might streamline your business model so much so that you could make more profit. And me selling my product to you is also going to make my product too. Now, if I didn't bother to pick up the phone and say, hey, Lisa, I got this amazing product that's going to change your life, I'm disservicing both of us, aren't I? And it's just a different way. And sometimes it takes away from the scariness of it, because I can appreciate, listen, I've made my phone calls. I'm sure you've done it too, Lisa. Lots of phone calls that you just had to pick up the phone.
BD.
Yeah, right? And lots of people hung up on me. Right?
It's funny, I think sometimes that the more you think about it, the more the fear rises. So it's almost like, just do it. I used to put myself through school doing telemarketing. Selling vacuum cleaners, and it was just, I got into this mode where, like, someone hung up on me or yelled at me, I just next
100%. And it's not personal.
Increase the pace, so you just get over it.
Two things there. It's not personal, first of all. They're just hanging up because they don't want your thing, and so they just hang up.
Quite frankly, didn't blame them.
Right? And then the second part of that too is it's not personal. And you're right, getting back up on the horse and trying again. I'm sure that you were successful with calls. And every time you got hung up on, or, would fuel, okay, that didn't go so well. But those positive calls that you did have that had some interaction engagement, I'm sure kept you fueled for even the next time. And it just, again, it takes the personal out of it. These people are, you're just trying to share with them. Here's what it is. And as I said, what I would also add is that in something like a sales call, and again, if I was to call Lisa and say, and I know my product's going to solve one of Lisa's pain points, then again, the disservice is there. So when you talk about that, and I'm sure there's other information about sales and other things we can talk about, but the whole idea of really doing your homework and figuring out, so if I was to call Lisa and I really wanted to connect with her because I really think she should buy my product, I'm going to do some research on her company. I'm going to look at some of the things that they sell. I'm going to figure out how my product solves her pain point, because that's what Lisa cares about, right? She needs an answer to solve her pain point. And if I can approach her, and there's a process, I mean, I'm not just going to call her and say, hey, Lisa, I'm going to lay it all on the line right now. Lisa could be busy. Lisa should be busy. She'd be doing some other things. So there's a process there where I start to sort of say, hey, can I call? Can I get 10 minutes of your time, Lisa? Can we book I promise 10 minutes, and I'll leave you alone after that. And then when I talk to Lisa, guess what? I'm going to share, I understand this about your business. I understand that this is a pain point. Am I correct? And then I tell her a little bit after she shares with some information to me, how my process, how my service is going to connect with her. And I can tell you more often than not, if I've done my homework properly and I've identified that pain point, Lisa's going to want to hear more. Because again, right, I'm doing her a service by sharing this with her. And at the end of the time, if I have some great appointments with her and it works out, we have a sale, that's great. If I don't, then that's okay too, because I've practiced and I've perfected and I've learned from Lisa. And I might even ask Lisa, I appreciate, Lisa, it's not quite what you're looking for. Can I ask you a little bit about that? What was it? What would be missing for you? What would be a better, what would make you the sale with you? And again, my words are twisted right now, but you understand what I'm saying. What would make it better? When would you consider this, Lisa? And if she says, well, I actually would, but it's just timing is off. Okay, now I've got a hint. I can call her back when the timing's right? So but if you don't pick up the phone, or you don't type the email, or you don't make that connection, then you can't practice. You can't learn.
So Kristel, we have some folks on the call, at least based on the chat, that are students looking to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. Is there things they could be doing now to prepare themselves for a future entrepreneurial endeavor?
Absolutely. And I think for that it's a lot of that is doing exactly this, showing up at different events and learning about entrepreneurship. I would say definitely taking some courses or taking some seminars or workshops, things like that for sure. Talking to other people who run businesses, you can learn a lot, especially in your particular field. If you have mentors, if you have connections, maybe you have professors, maybe you have specialists that a lot of times it's something we're familiar with already. Maybe it's a boss, maybe we work in a type of business, but it really interests us. And having those candid conversations and picking people's brains, right? Asking them things, what do they really love about entrepreneurship? What do they love about owning their own business? What do they absolutely don't love about owning their own business? Things, how did they get to the place that they are? What was the path that they took? Did they go through schooling first and then bought their business? Did they buy their business right out the gate and build their business? Was it a family owned? Because you can learn a lot about this stuff. And I think it comes from a place of more knowledge. Knowledge is power. But I love the point of taking courses. I know there's, the programs at Edge there's different levels where you can explore that. And I would say that's exactly where you should be, because you should be working alongside of like-minded people who have the mindset of an entrepreneur. They've been there, done it, got the t-shirt, if you will. And that's where you can learn the most from people. And it starts to become inherent. I had great entrepreneurs in my life. I had my favorite mentor of all time. I was 16 years old working in a women's clothing store. And the president of the company, the owner and president of the company, was truly an excellent entrepreneur. He was also an excellent mentor. And when I shared with him my vision of owning my own business someday, he took me under his wing and mentored me for years and gave me opportunity. And we had great conversations. And, as he was still my boss, and he kicked my butt when it needed it, but he also provided great, because he knew I was passionate and really interested, he also gave me opportunities to prove myself and understand. And sometimes he would call me and ask my opinion about buying stuff and things like that. So, but we had a lot of great conversations and exchange. And he allowed me the opportunity to pick his brain. He allowed me the opportunity to ask silly questions sometimes. He always said, there's nothing but no such thing as a silly question, even though I might feel it was. And that sort of conversation. And to this day, he's still a mentor in my life. You know, I'm a little bit older than 16, right? But he's been a part of my life for years, and a wonderful example of how I wanted to emulate as a business owner, you know? So does that help a little bit, Lisa? I think there's a lot of things there. And again, it speaks to some of these things here. Failure. Don't be afraid to fail. We fail in life, right? We fail a test. We maybe we get fired from a job. Things happen in life. There's nobody that is perfect. Things happen for all kinds of reasons. But I would say to you that we're all going to face failure at some point in our life, and whatever that looks like. But it's the mindset and the attitude of how we address that failure. If we go through it and we learn a lesson from it, and we learn what we can do better next time, or whatever we can change or learn from that lesson, and take that in a positive way forward, then that's character building, right? And we've all had those tough times. We've always, the fears, same thing. I'm a big proponent of, and it's interesting because I get a lot of, when I'm talking to a lot of my clients, we talk a lot about resistance. And resistance comes from fear. And resistant means that I'm afraid to pick up that phone to make that cold call, or I'm afraid to do something because I'm just afraid. I'm fearful that I'm going to not be successful. I'm going to lose money. And you can go all the ways around it. You can go over it. You can go beside it. And I always say to people, you got to go right through it. You have to face those fears and be honest about it. And that in itself, again, is a skill set, and it will serve you well, whether you decide to open up your own business or in your own careers. Even if it's a professional, that ability to face fears head on, to face failures and overcome them and learn lessons from them and build on those in a positive way will serve you very well, period. Whatever your professional is, and your profession is, I should say. And the idea, last thing, is the curiosity. I think that's one thing that all entrepreneurs I know have, a curiosity. They, how could this be different? How could I affect it? I could do better. I wonder what would happen if I did this. I know if I did this, this would happen. And it's that natural curiosity. And I think that's what also fuels that fire behind entrepreneurship, and being open to curiosity, and then looking to explore that curiosity. Play with it, have some fun with it. There's no right or wrong answers, right? But learning that. And even as a student who's considering entrepreneurship, there's programs to support you on that. I mean, the Small Business Center has programs of any of the small, there's a Mississauga Small Business Center. In any of the small businesses across Ontario offer a program called Summer Company, that you can get $3,000 grants to try out business for a summer. They're going recruiting right now. So and the age group is 15 to 29. So lots of, what a great way to be curious about, I wonder if I can run this business, get the grant and try it out. And if it doesn't work out or you don't like it, you still made a little bit of money, and it's a great skill set that you can add to your resume, right? So, but be curious, try different things, look for different opportunities. Somebody had their hand up, and I'm sorry, it just flashes quickly, so I can't see. Vera, did you have a question?
Unmute. Here I am.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Sorry, just doing the picture because picture is better of me today than it is in real life. So
okay.
Bear with me with that.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Vera.
All right. The question I had is more, the stereotype that exists certainly in the world about men and women's entrepreneurship,
Yes.
and the way they're looked at differently. And just to give you an example, I'm sure you've seen many of these competitions where men and women are competing. Both of them have great ideas and great, entrepreneurial problem-solving solution, if you wish. But the questions that would come from those that are funding these initiatives, like the VCs and investors, the question to a man would be, what's your trajectory for growth? And for women, what are your risks in your business? Mm-hmm. So that is already a downer when you have that kind of situation. How do we avoid it? How do we change that?
Great question, Vera. Thank you. And we haven't met before, but I can share you that was part of my passion project when I started the Rise project 10 years ago. That has now become Rise Ventures program, which is a $2.5 million program that deals with entrepreneurship, women's entrepreneurship. And so I don't have the answer for you, Vera, because as much as I think we've moved forward, we've actually gone backwards, especially respectfully with COVID times.
Right.
The women, traditional women households have been stepping back from their jobs, have been stepping back from their businesses. I can tell you, I'm a provider in a business program that is specific to women. And we started out with 25 women in my category, and I'm down to 15. So I've had in this last space of year 10 step down from their business models because of COVID and family responsibilities and balancing and mental health and all these things. And I would say to you, I wish I had a magic wand, because you're not wrong. We continue to build on our programming because there is a difference in men and women and understanding and running business. And I'm not saying there's good or bad, because I've sat there in venture capital pitch offs, and I've sat there at VC events and angel events and things like that. And I've seen the difference in questions. I've seen the difference in preparation. I've seen the difference in funding. And it's really hard. And I wish I could say, the point I make, Vera, or maybe I'm trying to make, is that it's a continued tenacity to get up and keep going, to find programs that are supportive of women. I know that EDGE is supportive of women. I can direct you to other programs that are supportive of women's entrepreneurship and business and things like that, and to continue. And I would love to never have the gender conversation again, to have the diversity in payment, women pay versus men pay. I mean, I'm sure you and I, Vera, could have a conversation for many hours.
Well, let me just say, my organization feels that, it's Brighter Venture, and we are very much focused on trying to advocate for this idea of advancing women-led entrepreneurship, because if we don't, and we have to do it on the policy front, at the national level, at the state level, if you wish, at the international level, without those changing in policies and perceptions, and where there is really an enabling environment that is being provided for women entrepreneurs, you're not going to have that desire for women to enter.
100%. And you know what, Vera, it's possible. Why I say that is because 10 years ago, when we built the Rise project, that started on a very small $149,000 grant through Status of Women. And we spent 20 months working with women, interviewing them, which then led to an opportunity through the Trillium Fund. And then, like I said, it's continued on 10 years later. But 10 years ago, prior to the Women's Economic Strategy funds that have come out in the last couple of years, myself and my colleagues, and I could name them off right now, were beating the drums down at the ministry offices. We were sitting at provincial tables. We were sitting at federal tables. There's women entrepreneurship centers across Canada. There is only one in Ontario, and it's in Northern Canada, or Northern Ontario. And they do great work, but trust me, we were there beating a lot of drums. And I will say that I'm very proud to say that this was on the beginnings of the movement towards more support for women entrepreneurship, more identification. And we were hammering for years about having specific funding. And there was a group of probably 30 to 50 women that we would show up constantly at different events, with different MPP's office, MP's office, I name it, we had it. So thank you for doing the work that you continue to do, because you're 100% right. We have to keep championing forward. We have to keep moving forward with it. And I thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Oh, wow. And I know Emerson made a comment as well too. I think there about tough one. Yeah. And yeah, tech industry is even tougher. Yeah, but there's lots of great support programs there. And I'm happy to, anybody who's looking for specific programs specific to their industry, who are respectfully are women and need some help, please email me. Tiana can put my email in the chat for me if you wouldn't mind. And happy to sort of direct you some really great stuff, because it's support. It's good stuff. There's lots of good stuff there.
there's no question that there's a gap, but I also wonder if it doesn't in some ways help us, like, just to put a positive spin on it, not that there necessarily is, but it does help us really find our grit. Like,
Yes.
if we want to do it, if we truly want to do it, it comes back to the question of how. So we're not going to be able to do, maybe we're going to be always fighting for now, not always, but for now, fighting to find the path through traditional models. But certainly new models are evolving. And if we, if we take the view of entrepreneurial mindset being not can we, but how can we,
Yeah.
then we will find a way.
Yeah. My mantra has always been, Lisa, not if, when.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody will say, well, if we get this funding, and I said, when we get this funding, right? And you're not wrong. The tenacity and lots of great things have happened. That women's economic strategy came from a great space of being mindful of supportive and initiatives, right? And you're right. Yeah, we have to continue to rally forward. And there's lots of great. I mean, we celebrated International Women's Day last week, and which became a week of events across the world, right? Celebrating achievements, pushing people, highlighting women's achievements. It was amazing. And I would say to you, I came out of last week feeling pumped and ready to take on the world. So it's that continued support, as you say, and continued understanding, and keep moving forward and what is possible, right? Because I'm a big believer in that. I never say no. I don't, anything's possible. Like I said, I'm the person who has plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then there's always H. If that doesn't work out. So yeah. But thanks, Vera. Thanks for asking. It's nice to meet you as well. So on that, can I get you, Tiana, just to flip the slide? Because I think it speaks to the comment, and it's sort of the perfect idea is that, what we need to remember, that we keep moving forward. There's a circular piece to this, and we keep iterating, we keep changing, and we keep moving forward. And this speaks to the idea that we think about things, we think intelligently, and that from there it becomes an idea, and then we try the idea, and we do it, and then we do it again, and we make sure, and again, right? Like we keep doing it, learning each time we try, right? Learning what we did well, what we didn't well, and we iterate. And this is no different whether you're talking about a minimal viable product, whether you're talking about making things happen in the world that need to happen, change happen. It's the same model. And once you keep doing, there will be a level of success. We will reach a point where that we don't have to have these conversations, that it is just a world that people are respected for what they bring to the table. Doesn't matter about anything else. We'll get there. I am confident I will see that in my lifetime. I'm 54 years old. I'm absolutely confident that I will see that, and we don't have to have these conversations. People are valued for their skill sets and what they bring, and that's it. Doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. So yeah, I really do. I believe that. And so, and I think that speaks to a lot of things. So from there, that's what I have. So, I mean, we can open up the conversation, and if anybody wants to share anything else, maybe something that inspires them, maybe a question that they have that we didn't speak to, I'm happy to answer some questions. But that hopefully gives you some framework. And again, it's there's lots of great traits and skills and things like that. But at the end of the day, the people who will be successful is the people who really believe in what they do. And they believe in their product, they believe in their service, they see how it is. One thing I didn't put in there, which I should put in there, and I should have, now I think about it, another great skill set in life to have also is to be coachable, and to be able to accept coaching, information, mentoring, advice, all those things. And a lot of great successful people don't pretend to know everything. They don't claim to know everything, and they are open to learning at all ages. They are interested and curious and wanting feedback and wanting information. And when they receive that information, they see it for what it is, and constructive and helpful, and to be brought forward and to be implemented. And so I would say that would be another skill set that I would see that's been very valuable in my life. I've always been interested in what people think, and hearing what they would, how I can better myself, and what their thoughts are about, and so I have a coach. I have a coach as well that helps me sort of get better at what I do, and helps me be better, be the best that I can be. And I always love our conversations because each time we engage, I learn something new. I learn something new about myself. And that then fuels my fire for the next thing. So I would say that's another skill set as well. Yeah. Be willing to hear stuff, even when it's difficult to hear, but learning to sort of take it out of the personal and say, okay, what can I learn from this and what can I apply and what can I move forward with? So yeah, I'm going to turn it over to the floor. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or even comments? If you'd like to share something, I'd love to hear it. The floor is open. Some interesting.
I guess I would just like to say that recently I've been pursuing more and more conversations. Like you said, like it's not glamorous. Like in the background, it's, whatever it might be, crazy work hours, a lot of
Yeah.
stress. Everybody's journey is a little bit different. So
Yeah.
it's nice to have the spaces to talk about that when you share that other people are going through the same
Yeah.
thing, stresses of how do I market myself, or whatever part of the story it is for this week.
Yeah.
That reality is really, really helpful to talk through, just even from like a mental perspective. And then you pick up on ideas because
Yeah.
there's many different ways of, approaching things with entrepreneurship and solving problems.
Absolutely. And that's the value of coming together as a collective. And that's why I think the Mentor Mondays are a great idea, being, as you say, Sarah, just to be able to share and hear and share ideas and get information. And as you say, sometimes it can be a very lonely journey, and understanding that other people are facing the same sort of issues or similar ideas about things, it makes it less lonely and more relatable. And sometimes you can share things that might help the other person. Right. And or just learn something, or just even hearing sometimes that, yeah, this does make sense. Okay, I understand why I feel the way I do. And that's a very valuable thing to share as well. That's the value of community. And when you're building an entrepreneurship opportunity, if you're looking at starting a business, a small business, you might be building it on your own, but it will effectively be part of a community that will build. And if you have a community that can help support you with that, it feels less lonely. And community includes programs like EDGE. Community can use mentors and coaches and professors and people who understand what it is you're trying to do. And that becomes part of your community, your village, right? Yeah. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it's the same way with raising a business. It's a village of people who are interested in wanting to help support you in that. Absolutely. Thanks for saying that, Sarah. I appreciate it. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Anything wants to share? Some fuel for thought anyways, hopefully today.
Hi there.
Hello.
My name is Domenica.
Hello.
Hi, let me just turn on my camera.
Yeah, thanks.
Your conversation was very interesting. I really appreciate all your knowledge that you're sharing today with us.
Thank you.
I'm in architecture technology. I'm an international student, and I'm starting to explore this entrepreneurship mindset, and I really want to learn a lot. But I feel that I'm in my basic, I'm starting to gather ideas and to know the business that I want to work in and to create my business. So I have a question for you. How can you give that step from having a very rudimentary idea to start developing? How's that step? How did you manage to do it? And any tips for students like me?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Thank you. And so it always starts with an idea. And if you have there's lots of ways. It's interesting you asked that, Dominique, and thank you for asking. I do a workshop with another organization around ideation and mind mapping. And so I don't know if you're familiar with mind mapping, but I love mind mapping. It's a very visual tool on how to plan out ideas. But in its very basic form, what you want to do is take some kind of framework. I often teach people, when you start to build ideas, I actually say, keep a journal or keep a place to write some ideas and things that are starting to get in your head about just colors and names and ideas and what you want to do. And then when you start to have enough of this information, there's tools like Business Model Canvas. If you're familiar with that, I'm sure Tiana could put that in the chat for us. But a Business Model Canvas is literally a one-page document that has all sort of the aspects of running a business, but on one page. And so the nice part about using a Business Model Canvas is that you can start to fill in, there's different sections. So there's one about, you know, what type of target market would the idea be applicable to? What kind of customers would they be? How would you sell it? How would you, and again, I'm being very generic, but you understand what I'm saying. And then what you do is you start to plot this out on these business model canvases. And what you'll notice is the spots that are empty or that you don't have a lot of information, then that's a place where you need to start filling in and doing some market research. We have a very, I teach a very basic process, and this is for standardized for a lot of people, is that you sort of move from ideation to a lot of market research to figure out if there's a viability piece, even before you start a business, even before you actually registered or started officially. There's a lot of work that goes into looking at the viability of that particular idea and how could you grow it, how could you scale it, because ultimately you would like that idea to be sustainable. And I can tell you honestly that, you know, even that ideation process itself it's not linear, you know, it's not just one line of, okay, I start and I finish. It's testing, you know, coming up with the idea, testing the product, maybe, you know, creating the opportunity to test it out and then going back to the drawing board when it doesn't work, you know, and that whole idea of once you start to feel that, okay, I think I've got something solid here, I think I've got some answers, then you can move forward in the business planning process. So, you know, with Edge, they have great programs here. I know Tiana's putting some programs in there too to support you in that, to walk you through that, right? The initial stages of to figure out if there's a business model there for you, if there's something there to that idea. I've worked with a lot of people over the years who thought they had a great idea, and then they went through the process and figured out they didn't have a market for it. You know, and then they realized, I'll give you an example, just so it doesn't sound like a strange. I had a lady who was trying to build she liked to plant, she loved gardening. And very quickly what happened was she decided that she was going to sell her gardening services to a landscape company. So, you know, the formal landscape architects and things like that. So she went ahead and she did a bit of a survey, introduced herself to some of these landscape architect companies, the bigger companies, and came back very defeated a couple of weeks later because not one of them were interested in her services. She asked them why. She said, you know, I thought that you guys would design it and I would just make it happen. But what she found is when she did her research, they tended to hire their own crew. They had their employees. And a lot of times it was students from the agricultural colleges and architectural college that they would employ to teach them the skill and the craft. So she got very deterred. She walked away and she said, well, interesting. She said, on my way here I said, well, there must be another market because there is a market for gardening and caring for services and things like that. She said, well, that's funny. You should say that. She said, as I was driving here, I was at a stop sign. I looked over at a house for sale and I noticed, I thought to myself, if I could just clean up the garden, put some pretty flowers, clean up the shrubs, mow the lawn, do some basic work to clean up, which is exactly what she liked to do, get her hands dirty. I bet you I could get $10,000 more for that house for sale. I said, well, that sounds like a market to me. So she went back and called real estate agents and came back a couple weeks later with 3 real estate agents signed up for her to do exactly that. So, you know, and if she had just gone ahead, so she had to practice and play with the idea. And then she found a market. And then from there, she could start to build her funnel for sales and things like that. Right. But it's really, and if that helps you. So that's why working through the process, working through an idea, sort of setting up, figuring out what works with it, working with the facilities, working with programming, working with all that stuff to sort of figure out if there's something there that you'd like to do. And you learn stuff along the way too. So that's the best part. Right?
Yeah.
That was a long-winded answer, but I hope the example helped you because
No, it was awesome.
Yeah, it's not to deter you. It's just that's the point of making sure there's something for you to build on. Right?
Thank
So you
you
got to
so
play with
much.
the idea. Yeah, you're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. Anybody else who have a question or a thought or share something? We're about almost 6:15, so I'm mindful of everybody's time, and I'm sure it's dinner. See, there I go again, dinner time. See, look at that. Gosh, I love food, Lisa. Makes me happy.
Me too.
When this is all over, we need one big food event. Yeah.
I think no surprise, I had a couple of restaurants in my day. That's great. Well, I
Well,
think
this
we're
is
at
so
the end
great.
here. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Emerson.
Tiana?
Yeah.
I think we're at the end.
Yeah, I think we're here. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciated you listening today. Hopefully that gave you some really good information and help. And I know Tiana's got all the great resources we were talking about here. So
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna just add a little bit more links in the chat.
yeah.
Upcoming Edge events and also the feedback form.
Mhm.
That link will work. So I'm gonna send this link. On the screen, you can see where you can find us on social media. Always connect with us there. And thank you for joining. Thank you, Kristel, for hosting this session. For
Yeah,
me,
my pleasure.
I was doing it as well. And one day I do want to be an entrepreneur. So thank you everyone for joining. Hope to see everyone at the next session. Bye,
Great.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your night. Thanks for your help, Tiana.
No problem.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Bye.
Hey, Tiana.